A note for the listener. The stories that you hear at the beginning of each episode are either based on true events or are inspired by them. We cannot know exactly what was said during those events, but all conversations that you hear are plausible. The following episode contains content that discusses mental health. Listener discretion is advised. Millie looks over to her roommate Janice as she lays in bed. Janice is sucked into her iPad watching Friends. Millie can hear the comedic, timed laughter of the fake audience after Ross says something funny to his lifelong love, Rachel. Millie looks down at her phone. She's been looking at TikTok for hours, trying to numb the pain of her depression and anxiety, but all it's been doing is making things worse. Millie closes her eyes. The mental pain is just so bad. She feels like she's going to explode. She pulls the sheet over her head. I just want peace. Please, pain, just go away. Somebody just give me peace. Suddenly, Millie jumps up, throws her sheets to the side, and walks out the bedroom. Janice is still on her iPad, locked into this Rachel and Ross love story as if it's her own. Millie walks into the kitchen, grabs her car keys, and goes down to the garage. The rusty garage door opens, screeching as it rolls up to the ceiling. Surely somebody would wonder why she's about to get into her car at 10 o'clock at night. Millie listens. Not a sound. Janice's sister Chloe, Millie's other housemate, went to bed more than an hour ago. She's probably fast asleep. So be it then, Millie spews. She gets into her car, turns the key, and drives off. The interstate is empty at this time of night. It makes Millie feel even more alone. God! Millie cries. God, where are you? Do you even care that I'm depressed? Does my life even matter to you? You probably think that I'm better off dead, just like everyone else in this world. Her phone buzzes. It's a text from Janice. Where did you go? The text reads. Millie puts her phone on mute. You can't convince me, God. Nobody cares. And that includes you. A couple of miles down the road, Millie pulls into the parking lot of the local Christian university and gets out. The car's still running, but she doesn't even care. Nothing matters anymore. Millie plops down on a bench and covers her face with her hands. She starts to weep, cries of agony ringing over her lips. Nobody's around. The students have curfew and are all inside their dorms. She feels so alone. Where are you, God? Where are you when I need you? How can I trust you when you aren't even here? That's what I thought. All I can get from you is silence. Millie swallows, violently dries off her wet face with the palms of her hands, and forces the tears to stop. She pulls out her phone. Maybe some more TikTok will numb her brain enough to calm her anxiety. Not that it's helped before, but the little dopamine it gives her is what makes her hold onto it as though it were a life raft.
How many coat hangers can hold my weight?
And all right, we're done.
My injection!
If you ask anyone what the most...
The thing about Italians, though, like, if you go to Italy, you don't...
I just figured out one of the secrets of everything is like.
Then, a TikTok video shows up that intrigues her.
Guys, the Lord meets us. He really does, and He meets us when we need Him. And so I just pray over you, whoever you are on the other side of the screen, whatever you need to hear or see to believe that He's hearing your prayers, I pray that He meets you in the same kind of ways. And just know we have a loving, faithful God who cares for us, who wants to give us good gifts, and who wants to shower us with the glory of His presence.
Millie just sits there, numb. Tears rolling down her face, again, wetting her cheeks. You're here, aren't you, God? And you've always been here. And you're speaking to me now. Right now. I am your host, Danique Godwin, and you are listening to the Little Life Studios podcast, a show in which we seek to answer your most challenging Bible questions. Mental health is a huge topic nowadays, and it's popped up within Christianity too. I used to hear from some Christians that if you were struggling with depression or anxiety, that it was some kind of sign from God and that He had cursed you, or it was a result of your relationship with God just being unhealthy. Fix your relationship with the Lord, and your depression will go away. I am so thankful that nowadays a lot of those Christians are starting to realize that mental health is as real as physical health. The brain literally changes when somebody is depressed or has anxiety or suffers from some other mental disorder. Years ago, I personally struggled with major depression and suicidal ideation, and I still currently deal with anxiety, though praise the Lord, not nearly as intensely. When I was super depressed back in the day, though, my understanding of God was definitely not healthy. So how does our mental health affect our relationship with the Lord? And what can we learn from both psychology and science, as well as the Bible? How can we heal and as a result have a healthy relationship with our Creator? To answer those questions, I've got Teresa Melton here with me. She is a Christian mental health and life coach who has spent years counseling people who seek healing from hurt and pain, both in their day-to-day life as well as their spiritual walk.
All my days has turned to sand, a place with no start and no end. In my mind I see clear water, endlessly waiting for us.
When you're first born, your main job as an infant is to attach to your caregiver, and whoever that might be. And but sometimes, and all the time actually, because we don't live in a perfect world and our parents are not perfect, and whatever happened, things can happen, you know. We all develop some kind of attachment injuries. And out of those attachment injuries, we kind of it kind of drives how we relate to other people in our lives, particularly our caregivers. And then later on, it's how we relate to other people, bosses, coworkers, friends. And then in the end, how we relate to our spouses, you know, and then how we relate to our children, you know, in the cycle.
And to God, I imagine.
And to God, number one, you know, and it really does kind of establish what kind of relationship we're going to have with Him, whether it's going to be a healthy one or an unhealthy one, just like with people.
So what are the specific attachment styles, and maybe, pun intended, attached to that question? How do those attachment styles affect us in our relationship with God?
So there are basically six styles of attachments, and the sixth one being the healthy attachment. This what we call the secure attachment. The other 5 attachment styles are attachment injuries, and they are the avoider, the pleaser, the vacillator, the controller, and the victim. And each one of those, depending on what is and you can have a mixture of all different styles. It doesn't have to be just one. Wow. But whatever predominantly you could be, you could be the victim, for instance, and they do all of the attachment styles because they're doing it all just trying to survive, you know, and making it. But a pleaser attachment style, they may please, and then when pleasing doesn't work, might try to avoid. In fact, that's the vacillator, big time vacillator, but it's a little different. I can explain each one a little more as the way I would describe the attachment styles is like a love cup. If the heart was a love cup, the avoider love cup style would be like a cup that's only half full of all the good things: the love, the affection, the care, the compassion, the great, all the stuff that that you use in attachment. The avoider love cup is only half full. And the reason why it's only half full is because when they grew up, they didn't have their love cups filled. Okay. And for whatever reason, either the parents were also avoiders and didn't give a lot of emotional attachment or affection, or there were other issues that were involved. And so they just learned to be okay with a half cup. And so they go around with a half cup full. So they have enough in there maybe to kind of make themselves feel like they are okay. But
they don't recognize that.
They don't recognize it. No, they don't recognize it. And then they don't have as much to give back. And they tend to be the type of people that, I'm okay. So I want you to be okay. I take care of myself, so you take care of yourself.
Right.
And we'll all be okay.
They're avoiding having a deeper connection.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So their attachment to God then, or to Yahweh, will look like, we're okay. They're neither up nor down. And they're just kind of,
interesting.
Yeah. And they have a halfway connection to God. It may be more in the forms of works because they are very works, task-oriented people.
Do they usually have the acts of service love language as well?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Yes, I would. Yes, I would say they would. Yes, because they are very task-oriented. To show their love, they're going to do something for you as opposed to emotional connection.
Wow.
So they'll be very works-oriented in their religious connection to God as well, and they're very high achievers because that's how they get their sense of worth, is by how good they are, what they achieve, and that sort of thing. And being task-oriented keeps them from being emotionally oriented, connected. So that's kind of the relationship they have with God. So it's not a real deep connection. I'm not saying that they don't have a real connection, but it's just different. It's not going to be as, God is a God of love he's a secure connector, and he has all the love languages in his love style. So what he wants is a really deep connection. He pours all of himself out for each and every one of us on this planet. He holds nothing back for us when it comes to love and grace and mercy and care and, all of these different things. He gives all of himself out like that. And so an avoider just can't really handle all that. So that's the avoider love style. Then you have the pleaser love style. And the pleaser love style is more like, if you're okay, then I'm okay. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to fix you and I'm going to please you and I'm going to, I'm going to please you to bring you into connection. And so you'll like me. And then, but I'm also going to please you so that you'll be okay. And, whatever your needs are, I'm going to fix them for you and take care of you and please you. And then you'll be happy. And if you're happy, I'm happy.
And so completely setting aside your own needs.
Yes. In fact, their love cup is a cup that starts out full of all the good stuff because they have lots of great stuff to offer people. Right. But the problem is they're always spooning out of their love cup into other people's love cups, trying to fix them and do this and do that, to try to please. And so then they eventually dry out and they crash and burn. And so
how do they crash and burn? Like, what's an example of that?
Oh, that's a very good question. Kind of like, so the mom pleasing all the kids and trying to please the husband, trying to take care of this and this and that. And eventually she just wears out so much. She just, just gets frantic and then just
depressed, or
no, not really depressed, more angry. More angry. Okay. She gets angry and just throws everything up in the air and says, forget it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then when she recoups, she'll do it all over again, because that's what pleasers do. They've got to please you. They've got to fix you, because if you're okay, then they're okay. If you're not okay, then I'm not okay. And we're a mess. We got to do something about this. They can't just let things go. Yeah. They're very, and they can be a little controlling and manipulative too, when they're like that. And let's see, and a pleaser usually grew up with a parent that had a problem, and they were trying to please the parent to make the parent okay, so the family would be okay. So they're taking care of the family and, picking up the slack where mom or dad are not caring, not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Could it also be a parent that maybe puts down the child and the child feels like I have to do this to earn your approval?
It could very well be a critical parent, could very well cause a child to please enough so that they don't get that criticism. Yeah. But a lot of times that'll roll into the victim child as well. So yeah, we have to distinguish between those. So it could be a bit of both. A victim will do a lot of pleasing in order to keep from being victimized.
Right.
But a true pleaser is trying to fix you so you'll be okay. Because if you're okay, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
So
how then does that come into play with God? Because you can't really, I suppose you can please God. Like people are very, salvation by works based kind of a thing. And maybe they start doing that.
Well, it could be that. It could also be just doing all the little happy things, to make everybody happy, making God happy,
Maybe feeling like I have to put on a smile today because God wants me to be a good Christian.
That's right. Never getting angry, never getting angry with God because things are happening that's going down around them, never complaining to God, just always being the perfect little child for God. Yeah. So never being real with God.
I've heard that before. People are like, you can't complain because complaining is bad. You can't like God will look upon that and like tell you that you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So that's the pleaser. That's the pleaser child or the pleaser style. The next one would be the vacillator. And the vacillator is very interesting and very challenging. Okay. The vacillator's glove cup has a hole in the bottom of it called insecurity. Wow. And so the insecurity means that whatever you pour inside the vacillator's love cup goes right back out through that hole of insecurity. And if it's a big hole, it's going to run out real fast and they're going to need a lot more filling up again. If it's a small hole, it stays in there for a little while. It's not quite as bad. But with a vacillator, they're always wanting you to fill their love cup. They're dependent on you to fill their love cup. And when it's running out, then they want more. And so a vacillator can be very demanding. But one of the ways they do that is they start out by pleasing people to bring them into connection. It's not to fix them like the true pleaser. Yeah. But they bring them into connection. I'm going to please you so you will like me and you'll want to be with me. And then they have these high ideals of what the relationship's going to look like. And when it doesn't fit their expectations, then they become angry. And then they start avoiding. They start pushing back. Yeah, I wanted you. I needed you, but never mind. It's too little, too late. Forget it. And then they get really angry and they'll avoid. They'll push back. So that's the vacillator love style. And what they need is that insecurity hole healed in their heart. The same thing happens with their relationship with God. They really try to please God because they know God is good and they're wanting to have this great relationship with him. But when things don't go right, they blame God for it. These are the blamers, and they'll blame anybody other than them take it on themselves,
So how does someone become a vacillator? What happened in their upbringing?
Very good question. Vacillators come from parenting where the parent was there one minute and then not the next. So the parenting was kind of inconsistent. So that can be anything, like, for instance, a parent who's an alcoholic who's really good and connecting and there for the child when they're sober, but then when they're on drugs or alcohol, they're not. And so the child is losing that connection then. So that's just one example, but it could be even as much as a stressed mom. Who is, okay one day, but just overstressed and got too many things she has to do the next day and just not be available, know? So they're available one day or one moment and not available the next. And vacillator children are really unusual kids. They are born extra sensitive to begin with. They're very sensitive.
Like genetically?
Genetically speaking, they are very sensitive, and they all have anxiety disorders. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody that has an anxiety disorder has a vacillator attachment injury, but everybody that that has the vacillator attachment injury is going to have an anxiety disorder as well.
So if somebody comes to you and you pick up on that they're a vacillator, you instantly know. And then it's always like that.
Yeah, always like that. And immediately I'm saying, okay, you've got the genetics for anxiety disorder, and we need to look at some natural ways of treating that, and it will help you with your vacillator attachment if we do that. But we need to treat both,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the vacillators are very challenging, very, very challenging. On one hand, they can be such loving, adorable people, and they know how to love and connect deeper than any of the other styles, They actually even too much. Sometimes they just want to be enmeshed with you so that they will feel secure, but they're very in tune to when somebody's pulling back away from them. They pick up on it very, very quickly. They can tell when somebody's pulling back. But unfortunately, the vacillator doesn't always know why they're pulling back. They tend to personalize. So if somebody's pulling back, they're saying, what is it about me they're not liking?
So maybe that person is just going through a hard time, or they're just tired.
Yeah.
But then the vacillator feels like, oh, I did something.
Right, exactly.
What can I do to fix it?
Right. They are very, they're not selfish people, but they're very self-centered, self-focused, internal. Right. They're very much internal in their head instead of being more aware outside. They're more what's the noise going on inside their own head, and they're very anxious, because of that insecurity. So they get very anxious in their relationships. And so a lot of their relationships are destructive.
So do they feel like God is the same way? Like,
yes.
Like God, you're pulling back?
Yes. I mean, it's like as long as things are going good and they feel like God has got favor, they're in God's favor. Oh, they're happy as can be. They're on cloud 9. They're so excited. But the minute something goes wrong and they blame God for it, they can actually turn against God and become very angry at God for it. Wow. And sometimes they might even do it kind of subliminally, covertly, not really overtly. Like it may even be in their subconscious that they're angry with God. They'll just stop being involved, stop praying, stop, those kind of things without even realizing that they're truly angry at God, And so...
like this just lose interest. Basically.
Just lose interest, yeah. I mean, it could happen just like that. Or it could be something totally overt, like I'm angry at God. Why did you do this? Why did you let this happen? This is your fault. Well, I thought I could trust you, kind of thing. So it just kind of, it depends a lot on the temperament of the person too. You've got so many things running in here. You've got personality and temperament and, all of that kind of stuff running in the middle of the attachment styles too. So you have to kind of look at the whole picture.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought I knew some things about this, but then the way you're describing people's relationships with God, I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm sure people are listening to this and are like, I am that person.
Right.
And so I think this is really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So did we cover them all, or was
we got 2 more?
Okay.
Actually, and then the secure connector. Okay. So the last 2 are the controller and the victim love styles.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, those are tough ones. The controller and victim are 2 people that grew up in the same chaotic home, where there was a lot of abuse and chaos or whatever that was happening in the home. The controller, the only difference is that the controller, as the controller's growing up, they decide they're not going to be victimized anymore. But both of them start out as victims. And the controller decides, I'm not going to be victimized anymore, so I'm going to control, so you can't hurt me, Whereas the victim goes on up and continues that pattern of being victimized and usually connects with controllers a lot of times, abusers and controllers. But anyway, and sometimes vacillators. So the controller's love cup has like Fort Knox around it. You can't get through to that love cup. He's got it really, or she, really, really heavily guarded. And it's like what's in my love cup is for me, and I will control it, and I'm going to control your love cup too. Because if I can control you, then I can stop chaos from happening. So I'm going to make sure that we don't have any problems and you can't hurt me by me controlling you.
So really the controlling comes out of an anxiety and a pain.
Yes, it really does. It really, really does. It absolutely does. And when it comes to God, the controller wants to control God. And you'll see them manipulating things in such a way so they think that God has to act in a way that they want them to. They are very big manipulators for sure. Now, you have a couple of different types of controllers. I will say this, that narcissism, personality disorder, will also kind of play into this as well. Sometimes, okay? So what I'm saying is that all narcissists, no matter what kind of narcissist they are, every single narcissist either has the controller or the vacillator attachment styles. But not all vacillators and controllers are narcissists.
Right.
You see? But they all have those injuries right there. All narcissists have one of those two attachment style injuries.
Can a controller have a genuine relationship with God?
They have, it's not, how do I say this? A narcissist does not have a real relationship with God.
Or with anyone.
Or with anyone. Exactly. But a controller will have a relationship with God, but they want to be the one in power and control,
Wow.
So they're basically telling God what they want, not asking, but just telling them, God, please do this and that. I want you to do this and that in my life. And, we got a problem here. I need you to take care of this, kind of thing. But they will, and do it this way,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So yeah. And they may not even realizing.
So are they the same with God in that relationship? Like
yes.
Holding God accountable for their own actions or something?
Yeah, you may be that way. It's like Adam. The wife you made for me, she tempted me and I did eat, blaming it on God again,
Right.
But it is that kind of a thing. And I'm not saying that Adam was a controller, but right there and then they had a broken attachment to God, both Adam and Eve, right there and then. And they immediately started picking up on attachment injuries.
Yeah.
And, but I do believe that Adam and Eve, in their grief and remorse, and because they did have an amazing contact, firsthand with God, I believe that they were given a lot of grace and that they handled it, But it's just kind of interesting because you can see the attachments already happening right there and
in
then.
the Bible.
In the Bible, yes, immediately.
So how does someone become a controller? Because it seems like it's a pretty intense attachment style.
Right. Well, I guarantee you the person probably has what I call the aggression gene. There is a gene that when it's mutated, it causes aggression in people. And vacillators have that gene, generally speaking, and so do controllers. You see it very, very often.
Doesn't everybody have that gene because we're all can be aggressive to some degree?
It depends on if it's mutated or not. If it's mutated, you're going to have more of a propensity towards aggression.
Interesting.
Than if you weren't. Okay. And when I do a lot of genetic testing as part of my work that I do. And when I run genetic tests on some people and I see that gene, I know right away that this person is having problems and needs to be put on some supplements to help them calm.
Wow.
And, but yeah, that aggression gene. So that comes out in controllers. They generally have that gene to begin with. And they have been victimized early on in childhood, or they've been raised in a chaotic family where there was a lot of abuse or violence, or just a lot of chaos and disorder and everything, and screaming, yelling, who knows what, But there's been a lot of really dysfunctional stuff going on in the family and unstable families. And so rather than being victimized, that aggression gene kind of gets triggered because you have a mutated gene plus an oxidative stressor equals disease. So if you have the aggression gene, which is mutated, it gets triggered by an event that's explosive, for instance, then or chaotic, then they become angry or aggressive. It'll turn on, and so then they'll fight back, and they'll start fighting back, and they'll say, I'm not going to be victimized anymore, and they start kicking back, and man, those parents never knew what hit them, and they will also be manipulative and controlling, very manipulative, because they're trying to control people to keep chaos from happening, to keep themselves safe, primarily. And controllers just see the angry side of God, and they don't really see the loving side of God. And so it really does hinder their relationship to have the full trust, and full love that Yahweh has to give for us, all of himself, to give to us. They don't really experience those things. Whereas in the victim's love cup is like a love cup that has no boundary around it, and they don't know how to protect themselves. They're used to just being meek and giving in and being quiet to try to avoid being victimized, or they will try several different of the attachment styles, like pleasing, for instance, or avoiding, to try to keep from being victimized. And so in that process, they will, but even then, their love cup with no boundary around it, anybody can just come and take from them, and they don't know how to say no. They just don't know how to do it. So same thing happens with their relationship with God. They feel like that they're unworthy, that they feel like they can't even hardly go to God because they feel like that God would not love them. Nobody loves them. They get that feeling kind of thing. And vacillator's will feel like God loves them 1 minute and not the next. That's how they were raised. They feel the same way. So the victim one feels like that they feel like that they're not worthy of God, and they feel like that God is not going to treat them right, that they don't deserve any goodness from God. And so they miss out on that relationship with God. They feel like God is always
like coming down on them or something?
Well, they feel a sense of shame. And they don't feel like they can really go before God as much because of that shame. There's this big thing of shame between them and God that's keeping them from being able to have that complete oneness with God that Yahweh wants, that He wants to have with us. So that victim is going to really suffer. And when it comes to, gaining strength and help from God, they're not going to feel like they can get it. They feel undeserving. They feel too much shame. They feel unworthy. And
like they're just not good enough for God.
Yeah, never good enough. Never good enough, right? The only other attachment injury that's healthy is what we call the secure attachment. And the secure attachment is totally different. This is a kid that grew up in a more stable home where they learned to attach to the parents. They learned that they could be autonomy. They could have autonomy and be themselves, and they had some sense of empowerment for themselves.
It sounds like it's really important to get to that secure connector.
Yes.
As an individual, as a Christian, for the sake of our relationship with other people,
right,
especially with close family,
right,
spouses, but above all, for the sake of our relationship with God.
That's right. That's right. A secure connector is going to have the ability to have trust. They're going to have the ability to be able to love and not avoid. They're going to be able to meet up with confrontations or conflicts in a secure way. They're not going to be insecure. They're going to have more confidence. They're going to have skills behind them that's going to help them to deal with the conflicts or confrontations or whatever comes up. They're not blown over by it. They're okay. It doesn't destroy them. And they're not afraid of God. They reach out for Him, lovingly and greatly and excitingly, and they can grasp everything that God has to give them because they're not damaged. They don't have all these other damages in the way between them and God. And it's more open, an open channel.
So if somebody hears this and is like, man, I really identify one of these and it's not the secure connector one, what hope is there in the Bible that they can grow out of this and they can heal?
Yeah. There are several texts that come to mind to me. One of them is one of my favorite texts, and it says, it's in Jeremiah, I think 29:11. It says, but I know my plans for you, plans for welfare and not calamity, and to give you a future and a hope. And when you search for me with all your heart, you will find me. There is, that to me just tells me this wasn't my life that He planned for me. This was the devil's doing. This was the earthly planet of earth, sin, and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
And He has a better plan for me, and I can trust Him with it. And if I search for Him with all my heart, He will clean me out. He will help me rebuild. And there's another thing. There's a little pattern that I use, a little formula. There's a couple of things. There's I'll share this with you. There's like the spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, and physical elements of every human being. And, the spiritual is what we believe about God, what we believe about ourselves and everything around us. And that drives the mental, how we think, which drives the emotional, how we feel, which drives the relational, how we relate to others. And all of that drives what happens in the body if we're stressed or not.
Yeah.
We're good. And also what we do in the body, the things that we do as a reaction to what we believe. So if you take all of that and you narrow it down to, we have one power. We have
and
one.
I see you pointing up. So you're talking about God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's more than that.
Okay.
We have one power. And it is the power of choice. It was given to us by God. We have the power of choice. We have two choices. We choose what we believe and we choose what we desire. We can believe that which is good and true, or we can believe the lies and something bad,
Right.
or the falsehoods. And we can desire that which is good and healthy, or we can desire that which is bad and unhealthy. Every moment of our lives, we're making these choices all day long. We're making these two choices, our beliefs and our desires. The belief is the spiritual realm. Okay. When I've talked about the spiritual side of man is what we believe. And the physical realm is our desires, what we desire. And we choose one of those. Okay. So let me give you an example. How do we come out of these, painful attachment injuries? Well, there's a lot of self-help books out there, but to reunite our relationship with God, we have to choose to believe. There's a text in the Bible. We have to believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of them
So diligently seek Him.
That's right. That's it. So, we have to believe in order to receive that reward. Okay. So the first thing we have to do is we choose what we believe. We believe that God is good, or do we believe that God is bad? What do we believe about Him? Do we believe that He loves us, or do we believe that He's just up there just letting things happen as,
Right.
As they will, kind of thing?
Like He's just sitting on some cloud and just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I started this world, now y'all run itself.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
And I'm going to come back and, fix it all later, whatever. But, do we believe that He is, or do we believe that in our attachment styles, do we believe that we can't reach Him because we're so bad or we're so broken?
Yeah, that shame that just takes complete control.
Exactly. And so we can't reach Him. So do we believe that? That's a lie. That's not the truth,
right.
Or we do believe that that God is reachable, that He loves us, that He gave His only begotten Son for everyone, that we should not perish, but live everlasting with Him. Do we really believe that? If we really believe that, then we've got the right belief to start with.
And we have to make sure that we personalize in a good way.
Yes.
Vacilators out there, personalize in a good way that belief that John 3:16, that He didn't just die in like a generic sense. He died for you and me.
Right. Exactly.
It's personal.
It's very personal.
And He would have done that even if you were the only person that was choosing Him.
Right. Exactly. It became very real for me when I really started spending an hour every day contemplating the cross.
Wow.
When you see what Yahweh delivered to this earth for the salvation of mankind, and you see what He went through, you see what, when He was hanging on that cross, in the very end, he's, why have you forsaken me? He thought, the devil told him, this is all for worthless, for nothing. See, there's nobody here that you can even save. They're all turned against you. And He still went through with it for us. That was something that hit so hard to my heart, and that it made me realize the love of the Father and the Son. It made me realize how much they were willing. And so, so when I see these things, it really brings into my heart how much Yahweh really loves us. And if He was to go to those depths to save me, then I'm salvageable. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't care what kind of attachment injury I have, He's aware of it, and He still did it.
Yeah. He can do anything.
Right.
I love when Gabriel visits Mary and tells her, like, hey, you're going to give birth to the Messiah. Mary's like, how? And Gabriel's answer is just, nothing is too hard for God.
Right.
I love that.
Right. Exactly. So, and it also tells me, that nothing's too hard for Him, but also He wants me. He cares. He loves me to that much degree.
With your whole mess and everything.
Yes, exactly. You really do want me. You've poured out all of yourself for me in your son.
Yeah.
So there's a text that, that says in the Bible that there is nothing that can come between us and God. It says in Romans 8:38-39, it says, "For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord."
Amen.
That says it right there. Nothing can separate us from there. So I don't care how messed up I am or this person is or that person is. He's there for us. All of himself has been poured out for us. We just have to take it. We have to believe. That's the first step. We have to choose to believe that he is there for us and he is all that he says he is. So that's the first step. The next step is to choose to desire. Okay. We have to desire him. We've got to want to go to him. We've got to want to be with him. We've got to want to turn away from the bad world and desire that which is good.
Which is God.
Which is God. Yes. Instead of desiring all the world's evil, where we get too much attached to things in this world that feel good. And, sometimes those things have been filling all those empty, insecure spots in our lives. Our attachment injuries we fill up, which, by the way, a vacillator may fill it up with, let me just name some of the things that any of these attachment styles can fill it up with. They can fill it up with any kind of addiction, whether it's sex, alcohol, eating, disorders, you name it, anything at all. And they can fill up with that. They can fill it up with an addiction to pleasing people all the time. That makes you feel good all the time. It's kind of a quick fix. It makes me feel like I'm okay, kind of thing. You can do it by avoiding. That makes me feel okay because if I'm okay and you're not okay, I can avoid you and I'm okay still. You see, makes you this false feeling of self-well-being. We do it through all of these, and controllers will manipulate others. Victims will go into their shells, to feel safe, So we do all of these unhealthy things to make ourselves feel safe in the world, or to, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of soothe or, our bad feelings, our fears and our anxieties, it kind of soothes over those things. Self-medicating would be kind of like that thing. But so we have to turn away from movies and things in the world that's going to just, again, kind of self-medicate ourselves, in our minds and brains and everything. And I don't say all movies. I'm just saying, and you know what I'm talking about in the world, things in the world. Yeah. And partying. I'm not saying that parties are bad, but I'm just saying that an addiction to these things, or just these things can very often, even without an addiction, can become something that's going to self-medicate those painful, insecure, shameful feelings.
Right.
We cover it up with something else. And so what we have to do is detach from all of the stuff and that's bad in the world and attach to Yahweh and the truth and the Bible and things that are good, nature and all this kind of stuff. So we have one power, and it's the power of choice. If we choose that which is good and we believe and which is the truth, okay, and we choose the good desires, then we're going to be coming out of all of our dysfunction and we're going to be walking a straight road. We have to make that power of choice. Now in that power of choice, we believe that God is capable of helping us, and then we make the choice to work to partner with him in bringing us out of chaos.
So speaking about that victory part, people might be listening and say, I need a change. But what are some practical steps they can take? Do they go see a therapist? Do they, a Christian therapist, I should say, I should add to that, because again, you need that God aspect in all of this to gain the victory. I remember there was a book that I read about years ago, How We Love.
Yes.
Yeah. So they talk extensively about this. I believe they have like worksheets and have workbooks and have like DVDs on their website that are very helpful. But what would you say is something somebody can do to start recognizing these patterns more? Maybe they just recognizing the tip of the iceberg right now, but listening to this podcast. What can they do to dive deeper and really heal their relationships?
That's a very good question. So the book you were just talking about, How We Love, he was a pastor and she's a therapist.
Okay.
And they're both very well studied in this attachment injury theory. So that book is a good place for starting. And they have online at howwelove.com a little self-assessment that you can take.
And it's pretty accurate, right?
It's I think the one that I give is more accurate.
Okay.
And
you give a different one.
I give a different one.
Okay.
And of course I'm involved, so you have a therapist involved and that makes a difference, and because I know what they're looking for. And so I can kind of ask the questions in a way that kind of will find out exactly, get the right answers. And so, but there's that. But the book itself is an excellent place to start, to figure out what your attachment style is. And same thing in marriages or anybody. If you know what one person's attachment style is compared to yours, there is a core pattern on how this works and, what your interactions are going to be like. And you can say, okay, well, I can see I'm in this pattern, how do I get off of here? And it gives you, okay, so I carry the core patterns and I carry a lot of the other additional, information to help people break those patterns and some additional information. But this is for therapists that have come from that book, How We Love.
Yeah.
Okay. But the book itself is a great place to start. Another good book is called Adult Children of Immature Parents. Adult Children of Immature Parents. I can't remember who it's by, but you can find it. That one, I've had many of my clients say, "This is me all over." They're writing my story, and so you learn a lot about your upbringing with your parents and how that has affected your life, and that also has a lot of helps in there too to help you kind of heal and mature and continue to grow, as a person, as a Christian.
Clearly, what we've talked about, the attachment styles, clearly it affects relationships with God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where do people start to heal that relationship with Him? Because it is a mental health thing. It's a psychological thing. Mm-hmm. But it's also a spiritual
very much
problem.
So.
And,
right.
and if God is that source, that one source that should be your steady rock, like Jesus calls Himself the rock, that built your house on the rock, not on the sand. But, then we are scared to do so because of how much this attachment style has affected our relationship with God. How do you start healing that when He's supposed to be your healer,
right? But
you're having a problem with the healer.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right, exactly. Well, one of the things that I have found that to be the best is basically just reading the 4 Gospels to start with. Because in the 4 Gospels, you learn about the love of God and you learn what His true character is and how much He is willing to save you, how much He wants to, His desire, and His belief in you. You learn about His belief in you, that you are salvageable, and His desire for you, that He loves you with an everlasting love. These messages will cut deep into the heart and it will start the healing process. God's word is a living word, that's where true healing comes from. And then He can also work through other books, like some of these self-help books that we've just talked about. Yeah. He will also work through a Christian therapist. So a Christian therapist would be very important to help with the healing, because that person can bring you back to God in the relationship and as the healer, There's also a beautiful book that I read called The Desire of Ages. Oh, yes. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful book.
Yes.
That just describes
very
all of Jesus' life.
Yes.
And what He's done for us. Man,
yes.
When I read about the crucifixion, I cried. It was so beautiful how it's described in there. And that's something I could recommend.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have you heard of the book by Paul Conniff, The Hidden Half of the Gospel?
No, I haven't.
He's a Christian therapist / pastor.
Okay.
I believe he is both. And in his book, he just uses the Bible and the Bible alone to show you how Jesus relates to all of our suffering. Whether it is addiction, whether it is abuse, no matter what you've been through, He points out Jesus understands, and he's lived something similar. Because very often we feel like He can't relate.
Yes.
And I think
Oh, yes.
that's definitely part of this
Yes.
problem as well, is that if, when we
Yes.
are dealing with these attachment theories and when we are dealing with the shame
Mhm.
and with the controlling and whatever it is that we do with God,
Mm-hmm.
that it is because we have a misunderstanding of who he actually is, and we feel like he's far away and doesn't relate when he
Exactly.
really does.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It really does. It makes a big difference. I always use another illustration that if a little girl was ever hurt by a dad, okay, she might develop the idea that all dads are bad, you know? And if she sees a dad walking towards her, she's going to feel there's a faulty belief. She's going to think, I can't trust that dad.
Right.
You know, then her thinking process go that way. Then her emotions are going to be, I'm ashamed. Because I've been hurt and dad's hurt and he's going to hurt me. I'm afraid. And so they become fearful and that sort of thing. And that affects the relationship. Instead of coming to the person, she will pull away from the person. And in the relationship, and then physically, it's going to cause a lot of stress, anxiety, and maybe shut down, so she can't face, and maybe she might run. It's a fight or flight thing that goes on. That's the same that happens with us and God. When we've had a bad dad, for instance, we're going to have a hard time trusting a good God. It's just the way it is. And so we have to, it's our first impression of a father figure. And so a lot of times, you always got a big work cut out for him. He's got to cut through all that red tape, all that mess, that's the noise and litter in our brains.
Yeah.
And put back the glitter and the happy. Put back in all the good stuff and make us see the truth, clean out all the lies.
So somebody listening to this might have tried over and over again to have that kind of a secure connection with God. And I might be tired. They might be exhausted. They might be like, why would I try again? Or maybe it is someone out there who's listening who's saying, I am at the end of my rope. I've been through all this stuff in my life and I don't trust God one bit. What would you say to someone like that?
I take them back to the story of Job and say, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, and point out how much more was given back to Job after his trial, and that we take them to the bigger picture of the great controversy
between Christ and Satan.
And show them the picture of the whole universe watching, and that we are, Yahweh's on trial, and we are too, but Yahweh's on trial. And we are testifying to the whole universe whether he's good and trustworthy and worthy to follow, even give our lives for, or is he not? Satan is saying all kinds of horrible accusations against God. We have to say, no, it's not true. We believe in him and we know there's a better world coming, and believe in it and hold on to it, and hold on to the true, loving, good character of God, knowing that there's better coming for you. Even if it's after Yeshua returns and we go back to heaven, whatever it may be, we have to believe that this isn't the end of our story in our trials right here. This is just a trial, and better is coming. We just got to hang on with strength from Yahweh and keep our focus on him, because we can have joy in the midst of all kinds of horrible atrocities. The martyrs, Huss and Jerome, hung on the cross, burned completely to death. But they sang hymns the whole time, never felt a lick of the flame, and they know God is good, even if he sent them to the torch, to burn on the cross. The disciples in Yeshua's day, they counted it worthy to die for him and to suffer persecution because of how much he suffered for them, and because they knew this wasn't the end of their story. It's not the end of the story.
I am Danique Godwin, and you are listening to the Little Light Studios podcast. If you like our show, make sure to leave us a comment and a 5-star review. Do you want to learn more about the Bible? Go to lls.tv/Bible School. And lastly, don't forget to give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Little Light Studios. We would love to hear from you.